Welcome to part 3 of our 3-part video series, Why Pavilion for SQL Server? A chat with a database expert. This is part of the Pavilion video series. I am Costa Hasapopoulous, the Chief Field Technology Officer for Pavilion Data. I'm joined in this video with David Klee, the founder of Heraflux Technologies and a deep SQL Server expert. In this video series, David and I are talking about what the impact of high-performance storage could have on the various facets of SQL Server and what that can do and help in a SQL Server environment. So before we get into the next part of our video series, I wanted to introduce my co-presenter today, David Klee, the founder of Heraflux Technologies and Sequilibrium Education. David is a performance tuner, enterprise DBA, infrastructure architect and consultant, and self-proclaimed geek. David's a great partner of Pavilion. We've worked with many of our customers to help them optimize their SQL Server environment, to take advantage of not just what Pavilion can do, but to help them solve their most challenging SQL Server problems that may or may not be related to Pavilion. David's a great SQL Server expert, VMware expert, and a great partner of Pavilion. With that, let's continue on with the interview. So David, one of the things we've been doing a lot of work on is, comparing people running servers with the storage directly in them, the NVMe drives, because the perception there is I get the most I could possibly get out of that ecosystem. And they moved away from SAN because of that, but what we've shown in multiple of our testing is by leveraging a Pavilion storage array and using a modern protocol like NVMe-over-Fabrics RoCE, the RDMA technologies, we get similar or same, and a lot of times better performance with the storage outside in a storage array. It's counterintuitive. But what we've seen, you have to kind of compare apples to apples. When it's in a Pavilion storage array, we're RAID 6 data protected, all that performance, right? And so if you think about DAS, you got to make sure you put some sort of RAID technology on that, which makes up software cycles, which takes up CPU, which hurts performance, right? And so what's your experience in that sort of context?
As a career DBA and infrastructure architect, the gray hair right here is from single points of failure. Simple as that. If you're on local storage, point blank, it is a single point of failure. It drives me nuts when these things poop out, and they do. Controllers, software RAID solutions, all this stuff is a significant drain on performance because it's a lot of overhead. Now, where in these pieces it is the overhead, remains based on your architecture, but it's always got overhead. It's always a single point of failure, and that's a real hard pill to swallow. If I can add redundancy by putting it on a properly redundant SAN and the performance is better, why wouldn't you? Really, why wouldn't you? Because of that extra protection. It's literally, as a DBA, I expect the worst, plan for the best, but you have to build resiliency into everything. And this is an easy way to do it.
Next question. So in some future videos, David, or other videos we have, I'm going to share some of our SQL Server performance numbers and things like that, but there's you've kind of coached us on other databases like MySQL and Postgres. And in our testing that we've done so far on those, we're seeing the same and similar results as we have with SQL Server.
Yep.
It's the same game applies, the latency. In the webinar we just delivered jointly, which we'll see some snapshots or people can look on our website. We did that yesterday. You talked about your demonstration of your transactions per second, with just a regular system, a tuned system, and then a really optimally tuned. And just by doing some configuration changes, you got materially different performance. And that's what we're seeing with these other databases as well.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, the tuning that we're talking about here, until you start hitting the database specific tuning layers, which we talked about yesterday, all of these best practices apply to virtually anything that's storage hungry, that's memory hungry. All this stuff applies. So Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, Maria, even a lot of the NoSQL databases like Mongo and Cassandra, it all directly applies.
Right. And then it goes back to your comment about single points of failure, whether you're using a scale out database like MongoDB and have a whole bunch of servers with drives inside of them, we got to manage everyone. There's a reason why SANs were developed, 25 years ago, right? Now, but what's interesting is because of the NVMe drives being so fast, people took them out of the SANs and put them back in the servers, but then they realized there's no utopia there. And then now with a Pavilion, we're seeing the similar same performance. So I kind of call it back to SAN.
Yeah.
So
well, part of it was because people replaced spindles with SSDs and the controllers stayed the same. And then people replaced SSDs with NVMe and the controller stayed the same. All they may have done is throw a little more memory at it. The controller was the bottleneck. The second you hit an all-flash array in every environment that I've looked at, the flash was not the bottleneck. It was all the controller and the metadata management and all the bells and whistles that they're tacking on top of this stuff. I just need speed. So
and consistent speed, as we said,
it
may start now. We use the truck analogy. Your truck can tow so much, but you put a little bit more weight in the bed, can't tow as much. A little more weight in the bed, you can't tow as much. It's the same truck, right? But as you add more workload, it doesn't perform as well. That's the typical dual controller architecture.
Exactly. So if you get the controller and the interconnects with the storage is faster than the flash media, the NVMe media, the bottleneck disappears there, and it literally starts to shift back up to the the physical machine, the compute, the database design, the queries, things like that. When the bottleneck is literally no longer the underlying storage, that's a paradigm shift. And now the hard part there is now all the skeletons in the closet that you've been masking are now things that you need to start tuning, because that's the bottleneck, not the storage. And that's where things get even more interesting.
You use the word as, what do you do now when storage isn't your bottleneck or your scapegoat? Right?
Exactly.
And with Pavilion, we're not the bottleneck and we're not the scapegoat. Well, we still may be the scapegoat because that's the way storage always is. But
a little bit of education. What happens is when people stop blaming the storage, then they blame the network for some reason. So we'll just blame that.
So David, it's been a pleasure talking to you today, and obviously working with you over the past several months, and you've been very helpful at our accounts, as well as just helping educate us on SQL Server and the value of SQL Server with Pavilion. Can you summarize in your mind why Pavilion for SQL Server?
Two big reasons. Latency to disk is screaming at the top. Lowest possible latency to disk means that business transaction is the fastest in the world. And the other is the multiple controller architecture, because physical, virtual, whatever, you have queues in there associated with literally how things line up with the controllers. So if we have more controllers, we scale out the workload. We utilize the power of the controllers and these disks to push that bottleneck a lot further up in the stack.
Thanks, David. It's been a pleasure talking with you today. It's always great working with you. So those of you out there, we have many other videos as part of the Pavilion video series. Some of those videos are from David and I. Some of them are really just SQL Server related optimization. And oh, by the way, they run on Pavilion. Other videos are specifically about Pavilion. So go to www.pavilion.io for more information. Or, of course, Heraflux Technologies is always there, willing to help you solve your most challenging SQL Server problems. Dave, a little advertisement for yourself?
Awesome. Thank you very much. I spend literally all day, every day, tuning some of the biggest systems in the world. We have a blast with this stuff. You'll find that we're a company of nerds. We love this stuff. So Pavilion makes us look good. We can solve some really big problems, and everybody works together to save money, make it faster, make it more highly available. That's what it's all about.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes part 3 of our 3-part series, Why Pavilion for SQL Server, a chat with a database expert. If you haven't listened to them already, check out videos 1 and 2, where David provides many more insights how SQL Server can be optimized to take advantage of high performance, low latency storage like Pavilion. If you want to learn more about Pavilion, check out our other videos at www.pavilion.io, or reach out to us at email at info@pavilion.io. Or you can always call us on the phone. We'd love to talk to you about how Pavilion can help you solve some of your most challenging storage-related problems and help you deliver great outcomes to your business.